Look, I heard you in the comments. I too want to make a gown for this porcelain corset. However, it does turn out that it takes some time for fabric to get shipped to me. So in the meantime, I thought we could make some really fun accessories to make this whole look come together. That way, once we get the fabric here, I actually can make the gown and then have everything ready to do a big reveal. Welcome to Porcelain Corset Part 2, Electric Boogaloo. Is that a relevant reference? Does anyone get that, you think?
Don't know.
So like I said, I've been starting to plan the gown, the full reveal look for this porcelain corset, and in doing so, have identified a couple of accessories I would also like to include to make it a full transformation. The first one uses up some of that extra Warbler and craft foam I ordered because, let's face it, I ordered way too much the first time. So I'm gonna be making some bracers in the same porcelain style to match the corset. I'm also gonna be making a crown because that is a project I've wanted to do since before I started my channel, and now I have a great excuse to. With that, let's get into project one. I wanted to make a crown for a while, and this project seemed like the perfect excuse for it. So what I'm gonna be doing is figuring this out as we go along, but my plan is to make a ring that goes on my head out of a thicker wire, and then add a bunch of like little sticky guys on top of it, and on top of all those little sticks on all the edges, add a bunch of beads. It seems like it's gonna work. I ordered some wire off the internet. I have a 14 gauge and a 26 gauge wire, basically a thicker wire and a thinner wire. And between these two different thicknesses of wires, we're gonna make the base of everything. So I think my first step is to start with the circle, because that way I know how big I need to make everything else. I don't really have a plan on how to cut this. How big do I want this to be? My hand plus an inch in the front times 2, whatever that ends up being. This is definitely the most scientifically accurate way you can measure your head for a crown. That feels pretty good. Okay, I'm now gonna do something that's probably gonna make everyone mad. Just try to use my scissors. Well, it worked. Now, I guess my next step is to make these ends not sharp and wrap them in a little loop. I'm just gonna we have these two little loops that come together, and I think what I'm gonna do is use some of the thin wire to wrap them together. Okay, that feels pretty solid, and it sits where I want it to, I'm pretty sure. Okay, that's step one done. So I found this Instructable about how to make a crown, and that's like what I'm loosely following for this. So you take lengths of your thin wire, you make little sprays with them, and you go from there. So I'll link the Instructable in the description. So what I'm gonna do is cut pieces that are about 14 inches in length to start with. Once you have that piece of wire in place, you can take a bead and put it in the center and twist it until it's secured in the middle. From there, if you want to add little arms, you do the same thing, adding a bead to the side, folding it and twisting it in place until you now have a little sprig. Once you've made one, you now need to make so many more. I thought this project was going to take me like 4 hours in total. I think I spent about 8 hours wrapping little sprigs together. I did make a couple different variations, the first one being these little flowers, as well as some green ones, and then more pearl ones. I have my ring for the top of my head, and I have a lot of these little guys made. I think I have 25 or so. Yeah, like 25 or so. My thought at this point is, I know the Instructable says to wrap your wire and put these on as you go. I kind of want to see what it's looking like, so I don't know the best way to do that. But what I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lay them out in a row, and I'm gonna see if I need more. That's kind of my big thing is A, do I want to just raw make more of them, or B, do I want to take my little flower stems and make them have little arms like these guys? See the difference? We'll kind of see how much space gets covered with all of the ones with arms, and then go from there as to whether or not I make arms or I make more. So I laid out all the sprigs that I had to see what it was looking like, and I ultimately decided that I didn't need to make any more, I just needed to add those little arms to the flowers. So I went ahead and added more tiny beads to these flowers and twisted wire for another 4 hours. If you're thinking about doing this project, it's not like any of the steps are really hard, just know that it will take you way longer than you think, and your arms and fingers are going to get really sore by the end of it. Alright, it has been many hours of me wrapping wire around itself with little beads on it, but I think we're finally at a point where I have enough sprigs that I can start attaching them to our base. I've gone ahead and marked off 1-inch sections on here just to help with spacing, and then I have put this piece of tape down and tried to space everything out sort of evenly. We'll see how this goes. Fingers crossed it's easy. But we're just gonna take more of this wire and A, hope we don't run out, but B, use that to attach everything on here. It'll give us a clean finish. It should be really secure. We'll find out. The wire was actually a really simple way to attach everything together without needing to use glue. It did take a lot of time because again, it's small detailed work, but basically you wrap the little sprig tail along the crown and then you use wire to reinforce everything and keep it all together. And after another couple hours of wrapping wire around other wire, we finally have a finished crown. If you saw me make that corset, then you'll probably recognize the method I'm about to use to make these bracers. But essentially, you get some saran wrap.
Oh no, oh no.
You put it around the body part that you are trying to make a pattern for. And then from there, you add some tape. Oh, it's so sweaty already in here. And then, once you have this, you basically are going to draw your pattern. So, and now that I've got a rough shape, I'm just gonna cut this off with my arm very carefully. It was on there for like 2 seconds. It was so sweaty. Okay. We're just gonna take this shape, cut it out, and just like this, we now have our lovely bracer pattern. Now that we have our basic bracer pattern, I'm just going to trace this onto the foam. All right, we have our 2 pieces. Time to move on to the warbler. I take these guys and trace out the same shape on the warbler with a little bit of seam allowance. Okay, now we just cut it out. The next step was to use the heat gun to activate the adhesive on the shiny side of the warbler. Once it's all heated up, you can just sort of push the foam into it and they stick together really simply. After that's adhered, I cut some relief cuts into the corners to make the edges all smooth, and then I used the heat gun again to form all the edges to make nice, clean finishes. I know I'm just touching this with my hands, but it really is hot. I have basically no fingerprints after this, so if you're gonna do this project yourself, be warned, wear some gloves, be smarter than I am. After it's all put together, I then just heat it and form it around my arm and let it cool in place so that it's perfectly fitted to my forearm. Once the first one's done, all that's left is to make a second. So I have my bracers that I made up last night, and essentially what we're gonna do is the exact same process as the corset, which is take a bunch of these hot glue pieces that I made. I'll probably need to make more. We're gonna glue these on and then spray paint everything silver to get that like filigree look. Like I explained in my corset video, the hot glue elements here are really about puzzling everything together in a way that you like the look of. There's no real rhyme or reason, except for the fact that I tried to keep most of the details around the outsides, and then because it was so small, I did have to cut up some of the filigree pieces to make them fit, but because everything's made of hot glue, it's super easy to do. Once I had a design I liked, I copied it onto the second bracer and brought it into the garage to add a nice, shiny silver base coat. After that silver paint was dry, I used my very thin white paint again to paint in this center panel where all the flower details are gonna go. Like last time, I have not bought new craft paint, so it's very patchy and it took many coats to finish this and make it opaque. But after we got there, I added one final layer of a pearlescent finish, which you can't really see a difference in camera, but I promise it's there, and when they're side by side, you can kind of see the difference it makes. And now it's time to layer on all the floral details. The first layer are these dark green wispy vines. Once I had figured out what I liked on the first one, I then had to copy it onto the second one, which involved a lot of referencing back and forth, which was a little bit annoying because symmetry is hard. The second layer is this thinner, lighter green vine. Again, a lot of referencing between the bracers to make sure they looked at least somewhat even. The final layer is a thin branch that the pink flowers go onto. And once I have all my ends, each one is adorned with a perfect little pink flower. After the paint job is done and everything is dry, I head to the garage for a couple of coats of clear sealer. Final step for these bracers is to add a bunch of gemstones to everything. And once I'm happy with the final level of sparkle, these bracers are done, and I think it's time for the reveal. Whoever's in charge of these videos should get in trouble for making me go into the woods and film with all the mosquitoes immediately after a thunderstorm. That wasn't very nice. I'm really happy with how this turned out. The bracers look so good when they're with the corset. Obviously they match because it's painted and done in the same style, but they turned out really well and they're a nice piece of like pseudo armor to go with it. The crown, incredible. I'm so happy with it. It's not the same look as the corset, obviously, but I think the vibes match really well with the sort of organic nature of all the little sprig guys on top, and the color palette all came together really well for a nice cohesive look. I think it really softens the outfit when you put the crown with the corset. The corset was looking a little bit like armor-y, whereas with the crown it kind of softens it and makes it look more like formal fantasy attire. We are missing one very important piece of this outfit, which is in fact the gown. I promise it is coming. The fabric has shipped. It is just gonna take some time to get here, unfortunately. So be patient, you and I together, we'll have to wait this out. But when it gets here, I will be making the gown video. If you had a good time this week, make sure you like and subscribe. I'm trying to get to 500 subscribers, and even though we're a little far away from that, with all of your help, we can get there a little bit faster. And with that, I'll see you guys next time.